So let's go back to 1996. Can you remember the era? Can you remember how strong Italian football was, and Juventus in particular?
Italian football was very strong in the 1996 era. Juventus was the best side in Italy. And I think it was a side full of confidence. We thought that being the best in Italy meant pretty much being the best in Europe. Italian football was that good at that time. Juventus had not won the Champions League for 12 years, and the last time was in ISL, so it was a very dramatic final. And we wanted to win it because we wanted, without being cheesy, we wanted to give Juventus fans finally a cup, a Champions Cup, worth celebrating for. Very good memories, and cancel everything that so dramatically had happened back at the ISL 12 years before.
Give us some of the names of your teammates from that era.
The team was very strong, was very athletic. We were probably the most athletic, the fittest side in Italy and probably even in Europe. We had a fantastic goalkeeper in Peruzzi, probably not as good as Buffon, but a great guy, a great goalkeeper. Somebody that you want to go to war with because had that kind of attitude. And then a very strong back four with Vialco, Ciro Ferrara, both with many presences in the national team. In the midfield we had Didier Deschamps, was now managing France, obviously. Paolo Sousa was managing Basel, and Antonio Conte was obviously managing Italy. So we had a very strong midfield. And up front, we played in a very unique way with three strikers, myself, Del Piero, and Ravanelli, and we were sort of so unselfish in the way we were playing the game. And we were sort of running for the team, scoring goals. We were the first defenders when we lost the ball. And so we had a very unique style, and we were a team full of confidence. And of course, the icing on the cake was the manager, Marcello Lippi, an absolute messiah for myself and for the rest of the team. So it was really the leader of a group of leaders.
Why was he so special?
It was special because he had simple but very effective tactical principles. He was very good at communicating them. And it was fantastic in giving us confidence. Being with Marcello made me feel that I was the best striker in the world, and I'm sure that he felt the same for my teammates. So I think that giving confidence, being able to manage a group of strong personalities were Marcello's best qualities.
You got to the final. The final is in Rome. Bear in mind you're from Turin. Is that a good or a bad thing?
The final was in Rome, and it was a very good thing because we knew that we had the stadium 75% full of Juventus fans. It was a little bit more pressure than when you play in neutral ground because you're playing at home, so you've got support, but at the same time there's a bit of pressure because you're the favorite, obviously. And for me, that match was quite similar to the match I played with Sampdoria at Wembley 4 years before, and against Barcelona in the final of the Champions Cup, because I knew that was going to be my final game with Juventus. Exactly the same thing I had when I played with Sampdoria, and then I left to go to Juventus. I knew I was going to come to Chelsea, so probably the last chance for me to play in the Champions League final game with my club in Rome. I was desperate to win, so I put a lot of pressure on my shoulders. So it was by far the most complicated game for me to prepare mentally before the kickoff.
Yeah, what was the build-up like in those days? Obviously, it's massive now. Was it still huge?
It was a big build-up, at least in Italy. We were playing in Rome. We were back in the final after so many years with a chance to win it. So we went to a training camp, a very secluded training ground in Rome 4 or 5 days before the final, and we spent the last 4 days in Rome just preparing, trying to concentrate, working out a few tactical things that we wanted to then put on the pitch, and And it was the usual preparation for an Italian team, away from all the troubles, away from all the distractions, focus on the game and get ready.
Now your opponents were Ajax. Van Gaal was their relatively young manager, and this was a time, wasn't it, where a club like Ajax could keep their best players, and wow, did they have some big names.
Ajax were the holders, and they had a very good manager in Van Gaal. They were a team full of confidence. We knew the way they wanted to play the game. They wanted to be in possession of the ball and dictate the tempo, and they were playing with two very offensive wings and a striker in Litmanen would drop, almost playing as a midfielder. They wanted to build the play from the back, man-on-man marking in the midfield. So a very a very unique side to play against. But we knew we had a chance. We knew that they were strong, and we respected them. But we knew we had a chance.
And you got off to a great start, didn't you? Someone who we came to know in the Premier League, Ravanelli, scoring your early goal.
Yes, we went one up, within 20-25 minutes, deservedly. It was a sort of a strange goal by Ravanelli. There was like a misunderstanding between the goalkeeper, Van der Sar, and one of the defenders. But Ravanelli was very, very clever in getting the ball and scoring from a very, very tight angle. And then he started running, and we couldn't catch him. He was so happy, and he ran from one side of the pitch to the other side of the pitch, celebrating. And then he was tired after that, and he got substituted. And no, it was a very good start, the perfect start, basically. Yes.
And has he become known for that goal? Is that almost defined his career?
I think Ravanelli has done many, many things in his career. Obviously, that is probably the pinnacle of his career, because when you play and score in the Champions League final, I think it's the only Champions League final he played, and it's the last Champions League final that Juventus has won. So yes, Ravanelli has become immortal after scoring that goal.
Tell us about the equaliser.
The equaliser, I think it was a gift from us, because there was a free kick from outside the box. We didn't deal with the ball very well. There was a misunderstanding between Peruzzi and Bjerkwood and Ferrara, and then I think the ball dropped where Litmanen was, and he put it in the back of the net. 1-1, unexpectedly, but it made us think. It made us realise that the final was not won at all. It was just the beginning.
How nervous were you about the penalty shootout?
I was very nervous when we got to the penalty shootout, because I had taken 2 penalties in Rome in the same stadium in the previous 6 years. One time in the World Cup against the United States, and I hit the post. And 2 years later, I took a penalty against AC Rome, and I broke my foot, and I was out for about 120 days. So I didn't have good feelings. And when Marcello came to speak to me as the captain, he said to me, Luca, would you like to take it? And I said, look, I'm there if you need me, but if you have another 5 crazy guys that are very willing to take the penalties, then I'll sit out. And he said, okay, let me think about it, and you might have to be the 6th one. If we're still level after 5 penalties. And I said, okay. And I remember Marcello saying that in that night, as well as when he managed Italy in Berlin, 2006 World Cup final, he knew we were going to win, because everybody seemed to wanted to take the penalty. There was nobody hiding, nobody running away pretending to have cramps or feeling tired. So he felt, when I looked around and I saw players that wanted to take a penalty in such an important and difficult time, I knew we were going to win, and we did.
And what was the feeling like when you did win?
Well, it was amazing. I think because I felt I finally won something that it was so close 4 years before, and because of me missing a few goal opportunities with Sampdoria. So finally I could get hold of that cup. And it was basically the defining moment of my career. Also, I think that when you're 31, I was 31 at that time, and I felt it was pretty much my last chance, because at that time, believe me, it was so much more difficult to win the Champions League final, because you needed 2 years to win it. You needed to win the championship first, and then following year you had to play Champions Cup and try to win it. So it was a bigger effort. And also when you're 31, unlike when you're 20, you realize how many sacrifices, how difficult it is to win something. And then you get very emotional. When you're 20, you're just happy. You don't realize what you've done. But at 31, with the pressure on your shoulders, time running away, and so many sacrifices and the injuries and stuff, then I got really emotional and I nearly fainted on the pitch.
Tell us afterwards as well, there's some great shots of you in the dressing room and then getting the plane back. I presume you went back to Turin that night?
Yeah, we went back to Turin straight after the match. I was sort of so tired, I couldn't really speak or say too much. I just wanted to recharge my batteries because I was flat, completely flat. And we celebrated the Italian way, which is very different from the way the English clubs subsequently taught me to celebrate when you win something so important. So we flew back to Turin, we went straight to bed, and the day after we left to go to Vietnam to play in a sort of in a tourney, in like a exhibition match. So no celebrations, nothing whatsoever.
No dinner, no drinks?
Nothing. We flew back from Vietnam, and I boarded a plane straight to go to London and sign for Chelsea Football Club.
Wow. Is that a regret now, looking back, that you didn't celebrate at the moment?
Absolutely. I think it takes so much effort, so many sacrifices, and it's so painful when you lose that when you win, you do need to celebrate. You owe it to yourself. You
needed Dennis Wise in that Juventus team, didn't you?
Dennis Wise was a master of celebrations.
So you left for Chelsea, but Juve's success continued, didn't it? And some more big names came in. That really was a golden period for Juventus.
It was a fantastic period for Juventus. Juventus was a great club with great players. I think that we were the players that basically, together with Marcello Lippi, the manager, that sort of built the foundation for a fantastic future of the club. And the club got to the final 3 more times in the sort of following 6 or 7 years. So it was the best club in Europe. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to win any of the other 3 finals, but it was a club that was competing for the top spot in Europe year after year.